All right, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and open this regular meeting of the McGregor City Council at 6:30 on July 8th, 2024. Let's go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And next on our agenda is public comments. Do we have any general public comments, or do we just have people signed in for a specific agenda item? We have Scott Calley. I'm guessing you're just going to want to talk during the, okay. We'll hit the consent agenda. Item 1A is consider approving the minutes of council meeting held on June 10th, 2024. Those minutes were included in your packet. We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 2, we're going to move on to receive the airport master plan presentation. Welcome.
Hello. Good, Brian? All right, very good. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Keenan English. I work for H.W. Lochner Engineering. We've actually done some work at the airport. Not too long ago, a couple of years ago, we did some pavement maintenance for both of the runways. But today, we got a project approved through TxDOT to provide an airport master plan. I am the lead planner for Lochner, and it's been a pleasure being able to assist with the airport and try to kind of put forward a roadmap and a narrative to help guide the decision makers like yourself going forward. And it's been a real pleasure working with city staff. And Brian, if you could go to, do I have control here? Gotcha. Did you say there was a laser pointer? Oops, daisy. You got it. Okay. Well, I may or may not need the laser pointer. Let's see here. Which one is it?
Just push the arrow on the top. Yeah.
Sorry.
On the laser in the middle with a little red dot.
Gotcha. That's the one I was looking for. My apologies. Okay, yeah, so we're looking at the master plan. You guys, I'll start on the outset, you guys have a wonderful airport. It's considered a small general aviation airport, but it's of a considerable size. There are a lot of things going on out there. Now, we'll get into some of the numbers, but the majority of the traffic out there is your smaller single-engine aircraft, recreational and some business. But there's a considerable amount of business activity that goes on out there, and we'll certainly cover that as we get there. Now, the airport master plan was kind of the central piece of the planning project that we put together, but it also included a whole lot of different elements. In fact, we spent hours and lots of meetings with city staff going over these. And, I'm not going to stand here and go into detail on each one. Of course, staff will have copies of each document, and any questions that you have, please feel free to ask. But I just want to touch on each of them, kind of more important pieces. And I'd like to preface tonight stating, up front that none of this is informational only. There, no action needed. There's no commitment to anything that I'm presenting today. City staff will have to bring forth each element as they get brought up, to move forward with projects or to adopt new rules and regulations or renegotiate and sign new contracts. So this is more of a guideline, a recommendation that you guys will be able to use and go forward to make those decisions. So talked about the airport master plan. That is really, again, the central piece of this project. It's taking a snapshot of what exists out at the airport today, trying to forecast demand into the future, and try to understand how the airport can meet that demand, whether that's finding revenue enhancing opportunities or going out for different grants or things of that nature. The business plan we'll cover a little bit in depth. That's really a financial snapshot, and again, how do we enhance the revenue opportunities, and what can we do? We've listed a lot of scenarios in the business plan document as recommendations on how to, either conservatively or moderately or aggressively pursue different types of revenue increases through, increasing rents, looking at different models of airport management, that type of thing. The rules and regulations and both the minimum standards, these are things that we actually took out of the city ordinance and put that in a document. And we went ahead and made some recommendations on what to add to those, as well as provided what TxDOT also recommended on those too. So we'll show you nothing too major, but I want to show you what our recommendations are for those. And then city staff can bring those before you and adopt those and put those into city code whenever they're ready to do that. The rules and regulations are just operating rules for the airport users out there. These are, speed limits and what you can store in your hangar and stuff like that. The minimum standards are kind of the minimum standards for people who have businesses out at the airport. These are, what's the minimum amount of services they need to provide, insurance requirements, things like that. And lastly, we provided a height hazard map. This is to help the city and those people who are doing business in the city understand that if you're going to construct around the airport, there are protected airspaces around the airport that people need to take into consideration. And what the map will do is it will allow you to pinpoint exactly where the construction takes place and allow the city to know whether or not that construction needs to be approved by the FAA or not. There's different thresholds. As a general rule, of course, the closer to the runway you get, the more restrictive those surfaces are. But within about a 2, 3, 4 mile radius of the airport, that height restriction is about 150 feet. So if you can just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're approving that, if somebody's trying to build 160 feet, that might trigger a question in your mind. So as part of the process, we put together a technical advisory committee, or a master plan committee. As you can see here, it's made up of city staff, representative from the FBO, JAG Aviation. Emily Lambert is your regional program manager with TxDOT. Of course, myself as the planning project manager, and also Chris Whitfield, who couldn't be here tonight. He's our lead engineer for Lochner. And then, of course, Justin Hyde. He's with Airport Planning Group. He assisted us with putting together the business plan. Excuse me. And help with the rules and regulations and minimum standards. So, okay, let's go ahead and dive into it. I wanted to talk about the business plan real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of the solvency of the airport. I can tell you, fortunately, that the airport does operate in the black year to year, meaning it can cover the expenses for maintenance costs and utilities and salaries every year, which is great. Not every airport can say that, especially the smaller airports. So. Pat yourselves on the back for doing that. Now, that's not to say that the airport may need some assistance during those years where it's seeking, a substantial construction project, a multi-million-dollar project. You do get assistance from the FAA and TxDOT, but a lot of those times those come with a 10% local match. And a lot of the times the airport doesn't have that 10%. A lot of the times they do. So there will be times where the airport will need to come before City Council and get approval for that. Of course, we want to forecast future revenue streams, find revenue enhancement opportunities. Real quick, we did provide and if you have any questions on it, a rates and charges survey. We called around all the airports, many airports in the region, and had them fill out a survey just to tell us kind of what they're charging for hangar rent, what their land lease rates are, what their user fees are, just to get an idea where McGregor stands. And McGregor is right in there. We'll cover some of it. We wanted to find areas of revenue generating activity. There's a lot of land out there, and there's a lot of room for growth, and identifying areas for aeronautical growth and even some non-aeronautical growth as well. Identifying marketing strategies. We didn't spend too much time on this, just identified some things that the city and the airport could do. And then, of course, one of the most important pieces of the business plan and the master plan in general is the capital improvement plan. So what I'm going to show you tonight are some improvements, some pavement maintenance that the city staff has identified and we have recommended, and a capital improvement plan will show that plan of action to get that funded, shows what the priorities are. Again, it's not a commitment, but it's something that you want to present to the to TxDOT so they can identify the needs of the airport. So we'll definitely cover that. It's a big, important piece. So real quick, just wanted to go over some revenues and expenses just to give you an idea of how the airport operates. So for this last year, the total revenue stream was $420,000. Not a lot to work with. But like I said, the airport does operate in the black. It's able to cover much of the expenses. Your major source of revenues, of course, hangar rent. The airport actually owns about, 7 hangars out there. I think they have 6 or 7 airport six T hangars, which are made up of individual units. Some are 10, 8, something like that. The remainder of hangars out there are actually privately owned, in which they lease the land, the airport property, and construct their own hangar. But when you take the 6 or 7 T hangar units, you're looking at about $200,000 a year. So that's your most amount of revenue that you get. So really, where the money is made for the airport is leasing out those hangars. I can say that, you know, of course you would love to build more and more hangars out at the airport, but as you know, it's a challenge. The FAA does give out some grants for hangars. It's very rare, and there's a lot of conditions that you have to meet. One of those conditions are that all of your safety and your maintenance priorities have to be met, or your needs have to be met. Of course, that's very hard, especially at the larger airports. You're always going to have pavement maintenance that you're going to do, so satisfying that requirement is difficult. It can happen. TxDOT right now does not have a program in place that helps, you know, local airports fund and construct T hangars. Maybe they will in the future, but for right now, that cost is unfortunately all on the city side. And when you're talking about $500,000 to $1 million for a T hangar unit or a hangar, it gets costly. So, but again, that yields the most revenue. Second on the list is the farmland lease. Like I said, you've got a lot of property out there unused right now, so continuing to re-up that land lease will be, or that farmland lease will be important. Third on the list, and I won't go through every one of these, but is your fuel flowage fee. Like I mentioned, the FBO, or the fixed-based operator, which is in the aviation industry, just means the company or the entity that provides fueling operations. They handle all the customer service. They're towing aircraft. They're meeting the pilots and their crews as they get off the aircraft. That is done privately. You have a contract with the airport, and that contract is actually going to be up for renegotiation very soon, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But part of that agreement is that that company, that is JAG Aviation, is selling all the fuel to aircraft owners. The city of McGregor gets a piece of that. And I can't remember the exact threshold, but I think the first 120,000 gallons, the airport's getting 6 cents for every gallon that's sold out there. After that, it's 11 or 12 cents.
The first 120 is 11, after that it
Goes to 6. Okay, so I got that backwards. Again, the rates and charges survey suggests that there might be some room to increase that. And we'll certainly share that with you to help you make that determination. Again, these are recommendations. We provided scenarios, different scenarios that could help increase revenues. We understand the sensitivity about increasing costs on the public and things like that. So we just wanted to give you that information. Airport land lease, about $17,000 a year. Those are all the hangars that are out there that have, 10, 20, 30-year land leases. And of course, the rest you can kind of see, interest, user fee. Every aircraft out there pays $10 a month to base their aircraft out there. The storage, some of the end caps on the hangars have some storage areas that are used, some flight school fees and miscellaneous things like that. So here's the expenditures. Salaries is at the top. Skip capital outlay for right now. Maintenance and services is up there, and of course your utilities are fixed. Of course, they will rise year over year. So, for example, this year you were able to cover the costs of all the expenditures with the revenues that you made. Capital outlay, that is something that the airport budgets for. That could be, so for this year, that could be used for any type of improvements made to really anything, hangars. It helped pay for the local match for the planning project. A lot of years where you're going to go out for a major improvement project where you're using FAA funds, that capital outlay is going to pay for that local match. And a lot of times it's going to cover it, but again, sometimes not. And so, yeah, so there's a snapshot of 2023, 2024. And as you look in the past 4 years or so, again, revenues are somewhere around that fluctuating $300,000 mark. And, you know, there's a lot of fixed revenues, but, you know, the amount of fuel is something that fluctuates. That's going to change. Airport user fees may change, but you're hovering right around that $300,000 mark right there. I did want to bring one thing up to the City Council's attention. If you look in the top right-hand corner of the screen, AIP and BIL, so the Airport Improvement Program, that's the FAA program in which the airport receives $150,000 per year. And it gets that for every year, and you can use that however you'd like. If you don't use it, it will max out after 4 years at $600,000. We haven't got quite the answer back from Texel on what that number is. I wasn't taking into account the money used for the planning project, but I think that number, that $600,000, at least by next year, you'll be close to that $600,000, which means it's probably time to do a project. It's not that you will lose it, but you know, the longer that money sits, the longer a signal is sent to the FAA that, well, maybe this airport doesn't have any needs, doesn't have any urgent needs. So, bipartisan infrastructure law, that's the infrastructure bill that was passed by Congress and signed by the president a few years ago. That was a 5-year bill that gave airports different amounts of money. I can't remember what that comes out to per year for McGregor. It changes every year, but it's around that 150, 140, somewhere in there. You're at about $881,000. Next year is the last year that you can use that money. You can use some in 2027, but some of it will go away. And then by 2028, if you haven't used it, then you lose it. And the reason that is because that was a one-time, yeah, they may extend it. I don't know. You know, part of that was because of COVID. But it's hard to guess if they will. Probably not. That AIP money will always be there. So you've got a pretty good bank right there, and we'll show you the projects that we have, and I think that's going to cover a good chunk of it. As far as opportunities for additional revenues, if you look at the picture at the top, that's the area that we identified, has always kind of been identified as where aircraft hangars would be developed, and we'll reflect that in the master plan. Down on the bottom, you can kind of see what it looks like if all those are filled out with hangars. In green, towards the bottom there, we've designated as non-aeronautical development. I don't remember I don't know how long it will be before they do it, but I know they're going to extend the service road, the highway service road, at some point to cut right across the southern part of the airport. I've got it drawn in gray. It's kind of hard to see. When that happens, there might be some opportunity to go ahead and lease some airport property, and you're allowed to do so. Now, you wouldn't want to lease, you know, property inside the fence, where next to the hangars or next to the taxiways. But areas in which you don't really foresee aviation activity taking place, for instance, those areas in green, especially the one to the right, aircraft would have to cross the vehicle road just to get to the taxi lanes, and so that would be an issue. So you can get fair market value for that, or more if you can. So those are real good opportunities to increase revenues. Hangar rent, of course, we talked about. CPI increases, and I know Barry and the city have started to incorporate some of the stuff in their leases. Just putting those inflation rent increases, whether they're every year, every 3 years, every 5 years, just to make sure that the airport is getting a fair return for that. Fuel flowage fees, we talked about that, you know, seeing what makes sense when you're renegotiating with the FBO, see if you can increase those revenues there. User fees, the airport doesn't have a lot of user fees. Some of the bigger airports, especially ones where there's a lot of corporate jets, business jets coming in, they're accustomed to, you know, paying for a landing fee or paying for an apron fee when they come onto the apron. I know McGregor has some overnight fees that they charge people for staying the night, maybe some hangar fees for overnight. So there's not a whole lot of room to increase the user fees. We're not suggesting that McGregor anytime soon impose any new fees, you know, landing. Again, there's considerable amounts of business jet activity that coming in, but not to the extent where you can really take advantage of landing fees. It's gonna probably scare some people off. But again, that's a city decision. We're not recommending anything at that time, or at this time. Alternative management structures. In the document, we show some examples on how much money could be made if, say, the airport took over the FBO and started selling the fuel themselves, taking out the middleman, so to speak. And there are opportunities to increase revenues. Of course, when you do that, now you're hiring more staff. You're taking on a little bit more liability. So we feel that the situation that you have today is optimal in our opinion. You've got the city owning and operating the airport, and you've got the private FBO taking care of all the fuel sales. We talk about some hybrid situations where maybe the city builds some self-serve tanks one day where people can go and fuel up their own planes, and if they need a full service fuel from the FBO, maybe they could go over there. And we ran some numbers to show what that means. But today, I think you've got a good thing going. Land disposal, this one's a little bit of a touchy subject, but it's something that airports do all the time. It's a way that you could dispose of, and that's the term that the FAA uses, airport property. In the past, the airport has released some property, as you can see to the southeast corner right there, that will one day, I think the plan is for commercial development. And the FAA approved that. There was some discussion about 110 acres on the east side, whether that's for residential or commercial, that could be released. It's property that's not, in our opinion, you know, slated for any type of aeronautical development at any time soon. So it's an option. It's a way to get a large chunk of money at once. I understand it's not reoccurring money every year, but a lot of the times, and what we would recommend and what the FAA recommends as well, if not mandates, is when you receive money from these types of disposals, it needs to go into a revenue generating project. So whatever money you get from that could go into more hangars. That's how a lot of airports fund T hangars and box hangar construction. Or, you know, equipment or fuel trucks, that's going to generate revenue. This is, and just real quick, this is if the airport was able to satisfy the 20-year demand forecast, if they were able to, in an ideal world, be able to build everything that they needed to in the next 20 years, you're looking at about $200,000 in additional revenue. Okay, we'll move on to the, unless there's any questions, we'll move on to the rules and regulations and the minimum standards. Again, these were all taken out of the city ordinance, and then of course we added some things to strengthen that and give some leverage to the city. Again, like I mentioned, rules and regulations are airport user conduct, what happens if somebody damages the airport property, things like that. Minimum standards are standards, spell out standard terms for leases depending on the type of business and type of activity, whether that's you know, maintenance or flight instruction, things like FBO service requirements, insurances, things like that. So very briefly, we'll just cover kind of what we're proposing. So on the rules and regulations, just adding in the identification just to make sure that everybody knows that the airport's held harmless by third parties. Based aircraft reporting, meaning those who decide to base their aircraft at McGregor have to check in with the airport manager and give them their tail number information and things like that. We added a section about flying clubs. You don't have any flying clubs at the airport today, kind of, sort of. Yeah. But there wasn't anything on the books to necessarily regulate that. So we wanted to put in there, if you're going to have a flying club, which means it's a joint ownership by a lot of people, they have shares in an aircraft and they all have the right to go fly. And typically at airports that have those, there's a insurance requirements, bylaws, things like that. Talked about general storage, especially in hangars where if you're going to rent a hangar, it's got to be for aviation uses. There was a federal code register update in 2012 where the FAA came back and said, if you rent a hangar, you have to put an aircraft in there. But there's some room for leeway in there as well. You know, if somebody wanted to store a motorcycle, because that's what they drive to the airport, or their car, that's fine as long as you don't impede your ability to take that aircraft out of the hangar quickly and fly off. So there's some leeway, but it's a way the FAA finally tried to solve an issue that was happening at airports. And this issue is still an issue today at all airports. I couldn't tell you the things that I've seen in hangars. Polar bear, a stuffed polar bear was one that I saw in Tulsa. So, things like self-service, these are rights to aircraft owners that allows them to do, preventative maintenance and to fuel their aircraft. We don't have to touch on every one of these, but you kind of get the idea. One of the big ones is airworthiness. If you've got an aircraft sitting on the apron, it needs to be airworthy. It can't be, a junker, as they say. And it gives the airport manager some leverage in remedying that, and allows for some time for the person to, solve their issue if they broke down, because that happens. Aircraft break down and they need to park for a little while. But in general, they need to be airworthy. We talked about damage to the airport property, ground vehicle rules, speed limits, environmental compliance was a big one. TxDOT recommended this as well. If somebody spills some fuel out there, of course the FBO and the airport's going to respond, but there are some obligations for the aircraft owner, the business owner, to clean that up. Okay, so minimum standards. We added some recommendations from TxDOT. Again, environmental compliance, what to do when things spill. Just some FBO rules and requirements. These are things that they have to apply for already today, or they have to adhere to today. These are things like non-discrimination. You have to provide your service to everybody. You don't get to just pick and choose who you get to fuel up, things like that. And off-airport access. This is for neighbors, adjacent property owners, ensuring that they don't have just free access onto the airport, right? So anybody can get in their car and drive to the airport and look around. That's not what we're talking about. As the airport, you want to restrict anybody from getting access to the airfield from. Those are called through the fence agreements. And those exist. The FAA frowns on that, and there's some hoops you have to jump through. In fact, I think one of the rules that we changed on there was that if a through the fence agreement is going to be considered, it has to be approved by the TxDOT and FAA, which has been the standard anyway. The committee recommendations that we came up with, just subleasing needs to go through city approval, so nobody can just sublease their hangar to anybody. Businesses need to have designated hours, FAA certifications, for A&P licenses, things like that. Any business that is out there, that, especially ones that construct, they're going to have standard taxiway access. Things like the airport manager has the total authority to override any operations if there's a security threat. Talk about FBO insurance, having to have an actual sound and adequate insurance company providing that insurance policy. FBO services. One of the bigger things, and this has been an issue at other airports, are specialized aviation services operator. we put some language on here to address those business owners that don't have a business on the airport or lease airport property to run their business. We're talking about guys who are, working out the back of their truck, who show up at the airport and want to do, turn some wrenches on somebody's aircraft or do annuals or 100-hour inspections, things like that. Or people that do aircraft detailing and washing. This calls for those people who do that need to have some type of agreement. May just be a permit, doesn't necessarily have to be a lease. Insurance requirements that we feel aren't too burdensome, and that they have adequate space where the airport manager can designate where they can actually do their activity. So that was kind of a big one. That's probably one of the more major changes, just because it's something that a lot of airports struggle with and don't know. And it's difficult to enforce some of this stuff because it's not a 24/7 manned airport. So things that happen at night don't necessarily go checked. But I don't think the city needs to get into a situation where they're liable for any activity that's not sanctioned out there. But this at least tells people that, hey, if I want to do business at the airport out of the back of my truck or whatever, I need to go talk to the airport manager, get a permit, get some insurance. Okay, so we get to the fun stuff now. That's out of the way. Let's talk about the master plan. The master plan process is pretty standard across the entire country. The FAA has an entire book devoted to master plans. These are the typical steps. And what it starts out with is taking an inventory, what exists at the airport today, how many operations, how many base aircraft, trying to forecast to the best of our ability to see what the demand is going to be in the future, which is tricky. It's a best guess because there is no tower out at the airport that's counting out operations. There's some methods in obtaining it. So it's an educated guess. Figuring out what facilities are needed to meet that demand, what improvements need to be made. One of the biggest pieces of any master plan is looking at airfield and terminal area development plans. And we presented to the committee, probably 4 or 5 different alternatives showing, how do we want to configure the airport? What are some issues that we need to address? And what does the airport look like 20 years from now, 30 years from now? The committee came up with a preferred alternative that we will include when we update the airport layout drawing, which is just a drawing of the airport that we submit to TxDOT and FAA. And then the CIP provides a list of priorities with their cost estimates on how to get there and which ones need to happen now or in 10 years or 20 years. And we'll cover that at the very end of this presentation. So let's go over the key findings. There's 83 based aircraft at the airport today. That's a lot. Operations are about 38,225 annually, which makes up about 105 a day. Now, I will say that's not 105 flights. An operation is where, let's say, one aircraft lands at the airport, that's one operation. And that same aircraft takes off, that's 2 operations. So, if you want to translate that into flights, about 50 flights a day, which is good. It's busy. It's a busy airport. Future-based aircraft, the next 20 years, I think that's pretty conservative, about 105. And future operations are over 55,000 at the end of the 20-year planning period. The little chart down here just kind of breaks out what type of aircraft are coming in. Like I said, the majority are going to be your single-engine aircraft used for recreation or even business needs, pipeliners, what have you, flight instructors. And then beneath that, you've got about 10,000 multi-engine piston aircraft coming in. These are dual engine. These are a little bit bigger airplanes than your single engine, your King Airs. Your turboprops, these are still prop planes, but they're turbine engines and they take jet fuel. So you start to get into the business class. These are your Pilatuses and actually your King Airs and things like that. And we go to about 1,600 operations as far as business jets go. And these range from small corporate aircraft to larger ones. The picture at the top right of the screen here, that is a Dassault Falcon 2000. That's a mid-sized corporate aircraft, and we picked that out as the critical aircraft. The critical aircraft, it's a FAA term, that represents the most demanding aircraft that comes into the airport on a frequent basis. And the FAA defines a frequent basis as 500 operations or more. So what that tells you is that aircraft or other aircraft with similar characteristics are coming in at least 500 times a year. And it's also informing you about your airfield geometry, how wide your runway needs to be, how long it needs to be, how wide your taxiways need to be, what your separation is between your taxiway center line and your hangars. So, which your airport design code is a B2. We'll get into that, but that's basically telling you you need to design your aircraft today over that aircraft. The required runway length for that aircraft is 5,500, which is what your runway is today. There's not a lot of room to lengthen the runway. Certainly not to the south because of the highway. But even to the north, it's a little constrained. There's a possibility that one day you could possibly extend to maybe 6,000 feet if you acquired some property, cleared out some trees, graded some land. But we think 5,500 is going to get you what you need right now. I told Barry, and I'll bring it up now, in the meantime, as you get people coming into the airport and you hear of anybody, not complaining, but expressing the need that, hey, we like your facilities, 5,500 feet is good, we'd really love 6,000. Document that, write that down in your log, and then, in 10, 15, 20 years now, down the line, when you want to do a runway extension, you've got some documentation, which the FAA takes quite seriously and uses for justification. We covered some of that stuff. So it's the column on the far right. These are some of the key improvements and corrections that we identified with the airfield right now. I'll go ahead and go to the next slide so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. So, so you've got runway 1735. That's your primary runway. That's your 5,500 foot runway. You've got runway 422, which is your crosswind runway going to the east and west, or northeast and southwest. Taxiway Alpha begins from where the apron is, where the parking spaces are and the terminal and all the hangars, goes all the way up to about the middle of runway 1735, and then shoots all the way back up to the north. That's considered Taxiway Alpha. Taxiway D, Taxiway Delta, again, begins where close to the apron, but then diverts off of Taxiway Alpha, and then, of course, goes all the way down to runway, serves people who are trying to get to runway 35, which is the southern part of the runway, and runway 4, which is the beginning of the crosswind. Taxiway Alpha and Delta are probably, well, not probably, they are the worst pieces of pavement that you have out there. Taxiway Alpha, especially. And that one is actually the one that gets used the majority of the time. And so when we look at CIPs, that's going to be one of the first projects that we're going to be recommending that the city do. So Taxiway Alpha and Delta maintenance, overlapping runway safety areas. Runway 35 and runway 4, kind of you can see where they meet. They're too close to each other. You have to allow for some separation for what's called the runway safety area. In your case, that's 300 feet beyond the runway end. Needs to be free and clear of obstructions and bad grading, so that when somebody overruns the airfield, they've got some space to slow down or make where it won't do any substantial damage to their aircraft. So the current configuration does not account for that. And it's been that way for some time, but we've got some ideas on how we can remedy that in the, maybe not today, but like in the 4 or 5 year time frame. I think it's reasonable to do that. Eliminating direct access to runways. If I can use my pointer here. Taxiway Alpha right here comes off the apron, and it actually, if you're, say you're going up here to the north end, you have to cross runway 422. And the FAA states that anybody coming straight from the apron needs to make at least one 90-degree turn before they cross or get on an active runway. It's not putting you in any type of jeopardy or you know, but we want to show text on the FAA that this is something that we have identified and we have a plan to fix it. You need a larger apron with large aircraft parking. This is your current apron right here. It's pretty tight, and there's not a whole lot of room for a lot of maneuverability for larger aircraft. And so our solution would actually be to demo this T-hangar, which is owned by the city, again, not today, but down the road, and extend the apron out to where it meets this taxi lane right here. And so you could possibly have your larger aircraft here, and you could keep your smaller aircraft over where they currently park today. The terminal building, I can't remember when it was built, but it's getting older. Early 70s, yeah. It's not in a bad location. It's right here. It's probably, you know, there's not much of a better place to put that. That's where your vehicle parking is. But it would be great, again, difficult and expensive, but building in a new terminal in this place could be something that the city looks at in the next 10, 15, 20 plus years. Or a remodel, at least a remodel, which a lot of airports do. Concrete hard stand, we show that on the CIP as well. Barry was explaining to me that, especially in the hot summer months like we're in right now, larger aircraft that come into the airport might be deterred from doing so because they don't want to sit on this asphalt for very long, because that, believe it or not, the aircraft can actually sink into the asphalt. And so building some type of concrete, just slab, pretty inexpensive, would allow them long-term parking for aircraft. So that's one way you could get more larger aircraft in and sell more fuel to them. Taxi lane construction, so we talked about you need more automobile parking spaces, but we also show taxi lane construction for hangar growth. We show this on the CIP as well, but basically all that means is, since this row of hangars has been built and you really can't put any more hangars along this taxi lane, it would be time to build another taxi lane right there and then just fill that with hangars as well. So what the city would do, and it wouldn't be too large of a project financially, would build the taxi lane and then tell everybody, okay, come lease the land from us and build your own private hangar. And that's how you get more base aircraft. That's how you sell more fuel. So those were the big needs that we wanted to address, and I wanted to show you how exactly we're going to, or what we recommend the airport do in the near to mid long-term future. So one of the things that we recommended was providing for a full-length parallel taxiway. These are beneficial for safety, they're beneficial for traffic flow, they're beneficial for people who fly in who are not familiar with the configuration of the airport. This is a standard design that a lot of airports use, and it's the most efficient, safest design. In order to do that, of course, there's two scenarios to do that. Number one is to actually close 422. Now, well, I'll go ahead and show you scenario two. So there's scenario one in which 422 closes, and scenario two in which 422 stays, and you just have to make a little bit of a jog once you get there on the parallel taxiway. In this scenario, you would close the crosswind and redesignate it as the new taxiway delta. So you just take the runway and now you could taxi on it. You wouldn't need the existing taxiway delta, so now you're removing some redundant pavement. You wouldn't need to maintain this. You've eliminated direct access from the apron because that's no longer a runway. This option was explored, and it comes with a caveat. The FAA, let me back up. I'll start by, The airport actually did a pavement maintenance project for 422 a couple of years ago. Now, it was funded by the state, which is probably in the future, if you're going to continue to maintain that, that money's probably going to have to come from the state. Why? Because the FAA has got out of the business of funding pavement maintenance projects for runways that you don't need. Well, why would they ever think you don't need that? Well, I know Barry has expressed to me that that runway actually doesn't get used a whole lot. In fact, I think it has shown as being closed on past planning projects. Yeah. But the reason we show this is the FAA hesitates to fund crosswind runways when you don't need them for wind conditions at the airport. So 1735 actually satisfies, how should I put this? It satisfies the orientation of the runway that's needed to serve the wind conditions at the airport. Meaning, the majority of the time, the wind is coming from the north and the south. So the guys are gonna use 1735. In fact, it's 95% of the time. If your primary runway serves that wind coverage, 95% or higher, that's when the FAA says, well, you don't need a crosswind. Again, we're not in the business of going around closing runways. We just want to create the scenario in the event that you ever run into that issue. Again, TxDOT, the state, has been able to provide some funds to do that. That's why we show scenario 2 and why we've submitted scenario 2 along with scenario 2 as a contingency plan in the event that funding continues and you can keep 422 open. If that happens, you can actually close Alpha right here because you've got access through the parallel taxiway. As you're doing that, say you get some money for 422, at that time, it would probably make sense to go ahead and move the threshold because, like I said, that runway end is too close. Here's kind of what it looks like. Well, here's both of them side by side. But here's how this would phase. It would phase into each other. So taxiway Alpha is the priority. The next priority would be taxiway Delta, right? When you go to maintain Delta, go ahead and 422, when it comes up, go ahead and remark that and get that up there, and that solves for that issue. Another issue that I failed to mention was before aircraft get onto runway 35, they have to stop just short of that yellow line right there. Now the FAA, it recommends, it's a guideline that marking should allow for the aircraft to be perpendicular to the runway. That way he can look in both directions, left and to the right, to make sure that nobody's coming. As you notice, it's not quite, it's about 40 degrees, 35 degrees. So when you do Delta, go ahead and realigning that. It wouldn't be that much more cost to do that to where aircraft can actually see both ends of the runway before they decide to get on the runway. Because like I mentioned, there's no tower telling anybody out there. Everybody's got radios, but there's no air traffic control. And in doing so this way, when the day comes where a parallel runway becomes a reality, the way we've realigned taxiway Delta makes it easy just to go ahead and connect that to the parallel taxiway. That's what it looks like when you close 422. And that's what it would look like if it remained open. Okay, I'll speed up here. We also looked at some improvements needed around the terminal area. This is what it looks like today. I mentioned expanding the apron, demolishing this existing hangar. That hangar's pretty old. That could probably come down in the near term. Here's your concrete hard stand. We thought that might be a good spot for it. Tie it in with the rest of the large aircraft area. Hangar expansion to the east, to the northeast. And if the crosswind is closed, because there's no longer a runway right here, that prevents any type of height restrictions in general, and you could actually extend to the north if you wanted to. That would be far into the future. And of course, the non-aeronautical areas we show in green right there. Okay, let's talk dollars and cents and priorities, and this is the last few slides that I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. 5-year CIP, we've got a 5-year, 6 to 10 years, and 11 to 20 years. Again, this is not a commitment, it's an aggressive approach. Things change, priorities change, councils change, but we wanted to provide something to TxDOT that shows that you have some need. Again, taxiway alpha is a mill and overlay. You're looking about a $1.7 million project, in which 1.5-ish comes from TxDOT or the FAA, and of course you've got your local share. So that would be the responsibility of the airport and the city. And again, that would have to be looked at during the budgeting process and see what funds are available. Year 2, we snuck that in there. If it works out, it's a low-cost project, but it solves a real need. And you're looking at about $150,000 with a $15,000 match. Year 3, we're looking at that taxiway delta mill and overlay with a realignment. Because we've exhausted some of that AIP money and that BIL money on taxiway alpha, it makes sense in year 3 to do a design of it 1 year and construct the following year. That allows for you to pay for the design, the engineer cost, and it allows for an additional year's worth of AIP money to kick in when you go to construct. So instead of having maybe, $450,000 in year 3, you break it out into 2 phases, and by 2027 you've got the $600,000 and you can pay for it, if that math works out. Year 5 is just the construction of the taxi lane, like I mentioned, to the northeast, where private developers could come and build their hangars. Phase 6 through 10, your big project's going to be rehabbing your main runway. Again, a couple of years ago, we did a seal crack and seal coat. I think by this time, by year 8, 9, 10, that seal coat, that crack seal, will probably start to fail. And now we're looking at not a full reconstruction, not a full rehabilitation, where we're taking out all the pavement, but we're milling off a couple of inches of existing asphalt, and we're overlaying it, and that's going to get you 10, 15 years of life. So that's probably your biggest project coming up in the 6 to 10. 11 to 20, it's hard to plan for this kind of stuff, but we put some projects in there that we thought could come up. Mill and overlay the crosswind runway, assuming there's funding. Expanding the apron maybe comes up during that time. Constructing some T hangars, if the city somehow came across some money where they could build some hangars. We just wanted to put some cost estimates in there. A new terminal, wouldn't have to be large. And then mill and overlay your apron and all your taxi lanes where the aircraft park and taxi to and from their hangars. With that, I failed to include one other slide. It was that height hazard map, but staff has that, and I'm sure they'll be happy to share that with you. It just didn't get put in there. So, I know that's a lot of information. I appreciate the time and the patience going through it. I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
All right. Well, you've definitely given us quite a bit to think about. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. English? Not at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
if you have any questions that you think of, just give Barry a call, and this isn't something that we're just going to hand off and walk away from. We'll be a part of it and be able to be involved as much as they'll allow us to be. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go a little bit out of order here. We're going to go ahead and skip to agenda item 9, discussion and possible action regarding resolution R08-2024, a resolution of the City of McGregor authorizing professional service providers selection for community development block grants mitigation resilient communities program. That's quite a mouthful. So, Brian, you want to go ahead and educate us?
So this is a resolution for Resilient Communities Grant. We are doing that through GrantWorks, and GrantWorks is our grant facilitator, so they're here to answer any questions, but this will be what we use to facilitate the comprehensive plan for McGregor 2040, and all the funding is in there, helps cover the cost of just putting that package together.
All right.
The resolution should be in y'all's packet. Angela, I don't know if there's anything else associated with that or just the resolution. Okay. Martha's here from GrantWorks if y'all have any questions on how
Well,
the,
that's the whole reason why we're taking this out of order, is so she can get back on the road and get to Austin. So,
do you want to tell them about what y'all's process is?
Well, Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to come tonight. My name is Margaret Harden, and I work for GrantWorks as a Senior Client Service Representative. And we've come out and talked to the city before about this program. It does give you money from the General Land Office of $300,000 to do a comprehensive plan that includes a number of things that y'all would like to have in a comprehensive plan for your city. Building codes, flood damage prevention ordinances. It can have, you can update your zoning ordinance, land use plans, and a comprehensive plan that integrates your hazard mitigation plans as well. So I've come tonight because you are interested in going out for this grant program, and in order to do so, you have to do a request for proposals for services that do those things. You issued that request for proposals, and GrantWorks did submit their proposal for you to consider. And that's why I'm here tonight. I can answer any other questions that you might have.
all right, maybe not Bonnie, I believe all the rest of us were here when you gave the original proposal. And while I was sitting out there at that time. Does council have any questions for Margaret? Like I said, this is something that we've seen before. If there's no questions, I would entertain a motion by resolution number.
I make an ordinance, we approve 008-2024.
No, that's not. It's a resolution. It's
R08-2024.
Yeah, there's too many eights in 2024s.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, there's a motion.
There was it.
Do I hear a second?
She seconded.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Be safe going home. All right, now we'll go ahead and get back on track. Agenda item number 3, hold a public hearing on ordinance O-05-2024. Do you want me to read the entire thing?
Yeah, because it's only on there one time.
An ordinance of the City of McGregor amending the zoning district boundaries of the official zoning district map of the City of McGregor concerning certain parcels or tracts of land identified as being 48.84 acres located within the Edward Taylor Survey, abstract number 855, generally located in the southeast corner of the intersection of US Highway 84 and Windsor Road, within the corporate limits of the City of McGregor, heretofore zoned R10, single-family residential, and GC, general commercial, shall henceforth be zoned PD, Planned Development District for commercial, single-family residential, and medium-density residential, coordinating and superseding all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict and providing a savings clause.
Excellent.
Wow. That's just a little too wordy.
It was.
Brian, would you like to go ahead and introduce that a little bit better than what I just did reading all of it?
Sure. So this is the ordinance effectively creating a planned development district. This would be for the ranch subdivision development that we're working on Highway 84. On this, planning and zoning did meet on this last week, and at that time there was quite a bit of examples that were in there that we needed updating on. We had initially wanted to present it contingent on updating all of that stuff by the next council meeting, but city attorney advised us in that particular instance that he felt uncomfortable with the amount of visuals that needed replacement in there. The verbiage is fine. He says the legalese that is in the ordinance is fine. He didn't have any problem with that. But with things needing to be updated visually, he had some cause from caution on that one. So he advised planning and zoning on a couple of different options that they wanted to take. We can go over the ordinance tonight, intend to, but planning and zoning did table the ordinance until a special called meeting, which they're going to have on the 15th to visit just this item and the next item and try to get those through so that they can be on y'all's August 1st meeting, the special meeting on August 1st for city council. So that way we can get them taken care of and get them down the road with their project. So in the ordinance, we have the district is here. They have commercial zoned at the top here. This on this side is medium density, which will be townhomes, and over here we have a zoning called R5. We don't really have an R5 in the city of McGregor, so we created R5. It's basically the R6, but this will be smaller lot, single family homes on this side. We've got the verbiage to change a couple of things in there. The developer would like on these townhomes over here in the medium density side, these are rear loaded alleys, so the parking for the tenants is in the back. They would like to have carports instead of garages on that. And over here, these are front loaded, so they would like to have the garages facing the street. This is an older plat. We are working on getting whatever their submission is going to be, the final submission, but the access to this subdivision is a little bit limited getting to this intersection, which I'll show you here. Originally, the developer had given us a 35-foot easement on their western side of their property right here, and then actually re-engineered their project and came back giving us 70 foot for what we thought would be Windsor Road right there. And that was the process going forward, is that Windsor Road would be come off of 84 and come down within the boundary line here of their project. About 5 or 6 weeks ago, we had a really good sit-down meeting with TxDOT, and the city manager and myself and the Jacob Walker Partners had been talking to them for a couple months. They had a couple proposals for a McGregor relief route, essentially trying to get some of the traffic off of 84 down into the industrial park and get it from going downtown. And they had presented us a couple of ideas, and they were not really to the city's liking. So we sat down with them and came up with something that we thought worked a little bit better. In doing so, the alignment, it centers on Windsor Road across over here, and what I'm calling South Windsor, going down this direction, actually is all on this Balin side of the property here. So we didn't need that right away with the inside the ranch development. So they took it back and then made everything rear loaded on this side, which actually makes a reasonable amount of sense. We do have some little bit more discussion to have here as far as access, but we originally wanted the city to construct a temporary road that would be a 24-foot wide 2-lane road that would come out of here and go to Windsor Road, allowing access for people to go west on 84 rather than only being able to turn right out of these two streets to go down. And as we all know, it gets a little hairy because there's not a decel lane in the median down there. The engineers are supposed to be talking about what that looks like to potentially have the city have a little bit more expense on us to construct a temporary road that would come down this way and connect back here and come in, and that's a better, I think, long-term solution for coming in to the subdivision, allowing access to go east. So that, and then if you see over here, we still intend on having this rail bed trail at some point. We'd like to see access to that from the neighborhood. I think it'd be a great amenity for anybody that develops along that rail bed to say, hey, there's a trail. Hopefully someday we'll run from McGregor all the way to Waco. So those are a couple of the things that we are working on. I know the developers here, we did talk on the bonuses that exist in Waco that they could use as examples of things that similar things that they would like to see built in here. So we'll chat a little bit more about what that looks like. But those are some of the things that we had in here as far as just access to corral, temporary road, and the trail access. Identifying this space and how it'll be maintained needs to be put in the ordinance, and they've expressed a limited HOA, so it'll be mostly maintenance-oriented HOA. And then the fence, we actually wanted a masonry fence right here, and the developer expressed that that was just an overburden of cost, that they really didn't want to do masonry fence. So this is similar. This is not the one that we have, but similar to what we had proposed, in that it would be some stone columns and then some cedar. If you look at the Creekside Apartments, they have some that have a curb at the bottom. It's got the cedar with the cap, and we think that would look really good if it's done all the way down here along the peripheral, and then between the commercial and the residential. So we need to add that into there. And then these are the older exhibits for front-loaded medium density townhouses or duplexes. So we'll have to do a rear-loaded version for that. So that's those are the changes that we need on that. But we did have the public hearing last week, so we advertised it as having a public hearing again today. So that's why we want to put it on there. But effectively, planning and zoning has moved to reconsider the ordinance on Monday of next week with all the changes in there, and then recommend that to y'all for August 1st. So
Lovely. Okay, so we'll go ahead and open up a public hearing at 7:37. And do you want to talk on this one, or you want to talk on the next one, or you want to talk on both?
I'm going to talk on this one.
Okay.
So, Scott Calley, Columbia County Realty, 3828 West Waco Drive, Waco, Texas. I'm the consultant for the Dirt Dauber Investment Group. Here tonight to tell you that, and you've heard this before, after 28 months, I've been involved 14 months. As of today, standing here, we are exactly where we were day one when we walked in 28 months ago in front of the city of McGregor. We don't have a plat. We don't have anything. And as of tonight, I'm telling you, they have withdrawn their opportunity for you to have a development. They no longer want to be a PUD. They no longer want a zone. They no longer want to plat. They're done. Your staff has lost this $70 million tax base project tonight. We're done. We were promised July 1 we would have an ordinance. We were told July 1, the morning, that your lawyer had not even looked at the ordinance and he rejected it. We were told for 3 months that the city attorney was drafting the ordinance. We found out he wasn't. He told our lawyer that he had not done it. You guys have a problem here. You need to fix it. But this project's done, and you've lost it because of how your staff, they were negotiating last Monday night. Go back to the screen. That plat, at 5:03 on Friday afternoon, he was adding the lines and the squiggles and what he wanted to change. I've been to 3 project meetings in the last 30 days with your mayor, and we're told we're not changing anything. We'll get your ordinance, we'll get it done. It didn't happen. It isn't happening. He just told us tonight, oh, we got a little squiggle here and we'll change this, we'll do that. We just wanted a preliminary plat. We didn't want a developer agreement. We didn't want a final plat. We wanted a preliminary plat. We spent tens of thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours to get nothing from your city staff. It's embarrassing for you guys, I understand it. We don't hold anything against the council or the P&Z. I have a letter from the developers, confirm what I'm telling you. But you've lost it, okay? That's $70 million worth of tax base, and phase two, which would have been the back 58 acres, was another 80 million. It's $150 million worth of tax base you're letting the city walk away from. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:41. There's no action to be taken on this. And we will move on to agenda item number 4.
That's news to me. Felipe and I talked on the phone on Friday, and it seemed like they were getting examples of what to give me. We had a meeting with their engineer scheduled. They didn't show up for it. It was a virtual meeting, so they didn't have to come out here. A virtual meeting to discuss this with our engineer, their engineer. We discussed all these changes, and their engineer said that he would propose them to them, and he did. And they rejected them. The city manager, the city engineer, and myself felt like those were better long-term solutions. That's why we put them in there, left them in there. So their decision tonight is news to me at this moment.
I'll set that letter aside for you.
Okay, I'll read it.
So, item number 4 is hold a public hearing regarding the preliminary plan development for the ranch. So there is no reason to,
I would actually motion to deny it in that instance. That way,
this is a public hearing.
yeah. Oh,
This is not an action item.
well, whenever it comes before you, unless they come back and change their mind, that would be
Okay,
my
well,
recommendation.
We'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:42, and seeing as how they're not here to speak on it, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:42. And we'll move on to number 5, hold public hearing regarding final plat for lots 2 and 3, block 1 of the KBY edition, 31589 West Highway 84, McGregor, Texas, MCAD listing 408688 and 367355. Brian?
So y'all saw this actual piece of property last year. The current owner reached out to me and had some questions and was potentially thinking about selling it. We realized that there was a zoning discrepancy, that actually the boundary wasn't lining up on the property lines of where it had been zoned. So this, for whatever reason, was zoned residential, which is what this is, and he requested to have it zoned commercial. So we rezoned this all general commercial following this boundary. He's since asked in the last couple weeks to have this replatted. He wants to break off this 1.6 or so acres here, and then intends to sell the rest of this property, but he wants to keep this. So he wants to replat this and just have this piece be remaining. So this is all one, and then he wants it to be 2. Oh, and the gentleman that was just here is the adjacent property owner, or for Dirt Daubers, which was doing the ranch development here. In your packet, you should have received the zoning ordinance that we passed, I think it was October, if I'm not mistaken. They did state that they never received notification of a rezoning, but I do have an Excel spreadsheet there showing that it is one of the properties that did receive a letter. So you should have that in your packet showing everybody that received a letter about rezoning this piece of property.
All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:44. Is there anybody here to speak on that? none, we'll go ahead and close the public meeting at 7:44 and move on to agenda item 6, is discussion and possible action regarding final plat for lots 2 and 3, block 1 of KBY addition 31589 West Highway 84, McGregor, Texas.
That's behind Fox and
That's right, yes. This is 5J, this is Fox's and Cedar Chest, this is Baxter Roofing, this is Aviles Construction, this is the new storage building
Yeah.
here, and then I guess this is our no longer subdivision.
All right. Well, we've heard the whole deal about that now, so I will entertain a motion by,
So we're just talking about, sorry to interrupt,
no, please.
the sliver in between Aviles.
This,
And,
yes, sir. Yeah, so it's this yellow,
Okay,
that, he wants to keep this piece, and then the yellow is, the part that's basically breaking off.
so it's a roofing company, right?
Yeah.
Is that the one who, so he has that whole,
He does, yeah. So, and right here, there's a driveway access for the roofing company.
right,
This piece of property is actually under contract, which is why he's moving forward with replatting it. But
okay,
TxDOT has basically told whoever owns this in the future will have to build their own drive access, and they'll have to destroy this driveway and allow access for the roofing company. So it's not really affecting the businesses here, but he just wants to break off that 1.5 acres or so.
okay. Gotcha.
They want in large
Well-
part to be commercial.
It's zone general commercial right now, yeah.
And what was recommendation from planning and zoning on this?
Recommendation approval of replat.
That's just discussion. Okay,
No, we're considering action.
on 6, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'd like to regard the final plat for lots 2 and 3, block 1 of the KBY addition, number 31589 West Highway 84, McGregor, Texas. Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving on to next page. Item 7, hold a public hearing regarding ordinance O-08-2024, an ordinance of the City of McGregor, Texas, amending Appendix C, Article 4, Section 4.5, Special Yards and Open Space Regulations. Please.
The zoning ordinance right now has a 25-foot setback for carports. This was actually presented to planning and zoning last month. They had some research that they wanted me to do. Checked with our building inspector on that. We don't have any height requirements for carports. Planning and zoning's concern was that if we allowed carports to be a little bit closer, which is the recommendation of the ordinance tonight, to move it to a 15-foot setback instead of a 25-foot setback. That also they wanted to see something in there regarding height. Did a little bit of market research, and it seemed 8 foot 6 inches was kind of a norm for carports. So they wanted to allow the opportunity for a carport as far as the setback, but also restrict it where folks couldn't put a large motor home in their front yard and cover them up, but still maybe ATVs or a boat or something like that. So the ordinance reads tonight with the setback recommendation being 15 foot. Everything else is the same as it was, with the added height limitation to 8 foot 6 inches.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:49. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on that? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:49 and move on to Agenda item 8, which is discussion and possible action regarding ordinance O-08-2024, an ordinance of the City of McGregor, Texas, amending Appendix C, Article 4, Section 4.5, Special Yards and Open Space Regulations. And this is what the planning and zoning wanted to see out of you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Recommendation from them was to approve the ordinance.
I make a motion to approve ordinance O-08-2024. Second.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second to approve ordinance O-08-2024. Is there any further discussion on that? Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, we've already seen number 9, so now we'll move on to 10. Lee, I believe you're here to present us with financials.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank y'all for taking a little time for me to do that. I'm filling in for Carolyn while she's gone on vacation, so it's good to. I know I introduced myself about 2 or 3 times ago, but it's good to officially meet y'all. Let me make sure I can operate this clicker before I get in there. There we go. All right. But yes, the financial summary is going to be as of May 31st, 2024. May represents 66.67% of the fiscal year. And if you see down there, we've got some of the major funds and just how they stack up to that. We've got the general fund, 4.9 million revenues, 4.2 million expenses that are 70.7 and 60.9% respectively. Utility fund, 3.7 million revenues, 3.6 million expenses, still stacking up pretty well. We've got the event center, which is 101,000 in revenues, 185,000 in expenses. It's at 50% and 92% in revenues and expenses respectively. For the airport, we're at 309,000 revenues, 148,000 expenses, 98.4 and 47.3% respectively. So these next slides, we're just going to dig into that a little bit more. So the general fund net cash flow is 681,000 lower than the previous year. Revenue is down 231,000 and expenditures are up 450,000 as compared to May 2023. The revenue decrease is due to lower building permit fees of approximately 435,000, as offset primarily by a monthly transfer of personnel charges as budgeted, same as the last month. So expenditure increases are primarily due to an increase in personnel charges and other charges. Personnel charges being 416,000, other charges being 125,000. I dug into the other charges, and 100,000 of that relates to the agreement we have with the Coriel EMS. We were not required to subsidize them any last year. This year, we were required to pay the max of 100,000. So that's where a lot of that difference is coming from in other charges. But the offset in expenditures is a decrease in contracted services and capital outlay, which is mostly just a timing issue. Let's see, for the exchange, net cash flows are down 44.7 thousand as compared to the same period last year. Revenues are down 16.3 thousand and expenses are up 28.4 thousand. Of that 28.4 thousand, building maintenance is up 6.5 thousand and other charges are up 18.4 thousand. And this was also discussed last month, but the reason the expenses are showing up a little bit larger is we had those eclipse-related expenses back in April for portable restrooms, eclipse glasses, all the public hoorah with the eclipse going on. Made sure we were prepared for that. But the remainder of that increase relates to personnel charges. For the airport, net cash flows are up 33.3 thousand as compared to the same period last year. Revenues are up 81.9 thousand and expenses are up 48.6 thousand. Revenue increases, which I know we talked about a little bit earlier today, that it's primarily due to an increase in hangar rent, with the remainder of the increase in smaller areas like miscellaneous income and interest. The expenditure increase includes primarily capital outlay of about 22,000, with the remainder of the increase in personnel charges and building maintenance. So this report here is basically what we talked about a few slides back. It's just got more funds than just the general fund exchange in the airport. It's got it in a condensed format, and it's just got all the numbers. It's included in y'all's packets too, if y'all wanted to take the time to look at those separately. The next report deals with our cash flow, and the big summary of this is on the next slide. So we see that net cash in the bank is $3 million more than the same period last year. Operating accounts are up $2.3 million. Pooled cash is up $18,000. Grants are up $578.4 thousand. Capital projects are down $73.9 thousand. And debt service is up $171.2 thousand as compared to the same period last year. And I think the last slide is just our sales tax revenue by year, and you can see the trend line there as it goes from year to year. That 23 and 24 are larger than previous years, but 24 is still increasing at a normal rate compared to it. And I think that concludes that presentation, but if y'all do have any questions, I'd be happy to help, but I may need to do some investigating if that's the case. But thank y'all so much for listening to me.
Does council have any questions for Lee?
No.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding the moving of regular city council meeting from August 12th to August 14th in order to accommodate the budget calendar.
So Carol and I revisited the budget calendar, and we were trying to kind of condense the meetings so y'all would have 4 or 5. The first thing that we want to do is go ahead and ask the city council to move the regular meeting that would be on the second Monday, the 12th of August, to the 14th. That'll get that one out of the way, and then I can go to item 12 and explain the rest.
All right. Would anybody like to make a motion
I
on
make a motion, we move the meeting from the second Monday to the 12th.
the 12th to the 14th?
I mean, 12th to the 14th. I see that one.
Okay.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to move the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Okay.
Now explain to us number 12.
So, August the 1st will be a special call meeting. That's when you give us the codes or the tax rate that you want us to go with. Then August the 14th, which will be our regular meeting, since you just moved it, that will consist of other budget things. The final will be the very next day, Thursday, the 15th, and that will be all the final motions, all the final for the tax, the budget, everything.
Okay. So there's our announcements. Thank you, Angela. Okay, and now, well, we don't have a city manager here.
Nobody's here, so rid of him.
Okay.
That's the acting one back there. Brian.
We've already heard him enough today.
That's right. Go ahead.
Any requests or comments from the council?
Okay, something I wanted to ask was, what's the service area of the Corio ambulance? No. Is it just city limits?
They, almost like they talked about just the little outer, Windsor Road, not the apartments, not the Windsor Road that, yes, that.
Not,
They were talking about, because Kevin wanted all that to be in as well. Just out of-
and is that something they have time or they just?
I think you include our commissioner,
Just our commissioner?
county commissioner
Oh.
or something. Because, you know, I had Boyd, Perry, you know, they called the ambulance and they transferred them to Waco. He called them back and said it'd take an hour. Boyd called me, I said, we can get them out, just a mile and a half down the road. And I talked to Kevin, he said, we'll have to get the commissioner to change those lines.
Yeah, I didn't know how far they would extend it out.
Like the ambulance service, if we call them, they'll go respond.
Okay,
That's basically the.
okay, so,
So what, when they dial 911, it goes to someone else to
Yeah,
dispatch?
AMC, yeah,
Yes.
to get
Okay.
them.
But if you call,
but if somebody out on 3047 or Little Pad needs an ambulance, they call PD.
That they need to, yeah.
Yeah.
In general, dispatch will try and get the closest unit. If it's something that's one of those boundary areas, AMR will respond if they just happen to be closer, or Coryell will respond, Medic Fire.
But not even first responder. Rescue. Okay, that was your question.
All right. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, I got something I would like to, not so much of getting the answer now, but, you know, to me, I'm really puzzled on as to what happened with this. And I would like to know, find out or have a really concrete answer on why this didn't work, because there's too many people that was supposed to do this, supposed to do that, or should have did this, or should have did that, and my thing of it is, and I'm not accusing nobody, or anybody of anything, but it definitely don't want it to be on the part of our staff.
Sure.
If that is something that caused that to happen, then, and I'm not saying it is, that's not what I'm saying, but that's definitely something that we, I know I would, as a councilman up here, would wanna, really know and find out, because the thing about it, that's how we be able to make our decision, when coming from the zoning board and then to us, to be able to vote on to say it. And, you know, we've been going with, like he just even said, and you know it, because you've been working with it too.
Mm-hmm.
We've been going back and forth with this for a while, and I definitely know that part of it too is anybody can see it as a way, not just that individual there, but the other attitude as to, you know, the way they was going about trying to get something done. But I would like to, I'm just saying, I'm not plumb comfortable with why it didn't happen completely, you know.
Yeah, can we go back to it?
okay, I mean,
Is that
To-
something that, since it's personnel, would that be something,
but are we gonna talk personnel
no, what happened?
or facts?
Back?
What happened? We can wait,
Would you like that answer now, or would you like it just a little bit later?
because we're kinda in a gray area right
Yeah.
now of discussing.
Well, I mean, if it's something that we are not able to do, but I'm just saying, I'm speaking to, as a councilman now,
Yes,
so
As a
you
request.
can give me an answer next week, next month, or whatever, but I don't wanna do something that's illegal or that we can't do. That's not what I'm asking about.
Can you
It's
can you
just that
reopen?
Everybody,
rather-
everybody that was sitting here heard kind of what went on.
yes.
And, you know, definitely don't wanna leave, we don't wanna leave as a council. I don't feel like no council up here wanna leave, like saying that our staff is not doing their job.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would have that appearance, so that's what I was asking. Not so much if it's something we can't do,
Since
then.
there's no action item, and it's only public hearings that were involved, and now we're on requests and comments from council, I would just take that as a request
Okay.
from
Yeah.
council.
That's fine, that's
I'm
fine.
gonna go ahead and add something to that, Andrew, because I sat in on a lot of those meetings, and, the city staff is not at fault.
No, I never made that implication.
No,
That
I'm
wasn't
just,
what I said. That wasn't what I said.
I'm just hoping that reassures you a little bit that.
Yeah, that wasn't what I said, that wasn't
No.
what I was
And I know
asking.
from planning and zoning, all of our dealings, staff is not at fault.
But, no, anyway, is there any other further business we need to
Oh,
discuss?
one thing, and I sent you a note about this, the McLennan County Rural Transit Board,
Yes.
reelected August board. Judge Felton's, assistant, Ms. Miles, sent me a note about that, a couple days ago, and I was sworn in for another term, during our August meeting.
Yeah, that's good.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Yes,
All right.
congratulations, keep on that board.
Hearing no further business, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 8:06.
Is
I
it?
thought I had it cut off.
I thought you did too. 'Cause you
I
had-
wasn't taking that as an implication, I'm just telling you, that is definitely not what that was about.
Yeah, I feel like